A group of people with mysterious pasts must survive an elevator controlled by the devil, and will have to deal with the consequences of all their sins. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Devil, from 2010. In a large skyscraper in the middle of Philadelphia, a janitor is finishing cleaning the lobby, and thanks to his headphones, he doesn't even realize that a body has landed in the vehicle right behind him, completely destroying the bodywork. Sometime later, Detective Bowden appears at the scene alongside his partner Markowitz, who believes that the victim may have been pushed off the roof, as the impact of his body was much stronger than it should have been. However, Bowden noticed a rosary entwined in one of the victim's hands and contradicted him, saying that the person was probably trying to end himself. Observing the surroundings, the detective realizes that there is no shard of glass on the ground, and that the vehicle may have moved from its original position at the time of the crime. As they walk towards the avenue, the investigators find impact absorbers positioned along the streets, and conclude that these objects were responsible for moving the car to the alley where it was found. So Bowden believes that the victim has thrown himself from the skyscraper a few meters away, and decides to set off in the direction of the building. In the lobby, Sarah tries to slip into the corridors without being seen, but Ben, the security guard, warns her and tells her that she has to sign the visitors list like everyone else. Shortly afterwards, the man talks to his work partner, saying that he needs to deliver some papers on the 39th floor, and wants to take the stairs so he can keep fit. Upon hearing this, Ben's colleague reprimands him and orders him to take the elevator so that he can return to the lobby as soon as possible and continue his work. Meanwhile, a young man called Vince arrives at the venue, and while walking through the corridors, he bumps into Janice, and together they decide to take the next available elevator, accompanied by Sarah and Ben. Finally, Tony appears and joins the others, just before the door closes, causing the group to start climbing. Suddenly, the elevator stops halfway up, and Lustig, who was watching the building from the security cameras, notices the incident and decides to contact Dwight so that they can fix the elevator. Soon after, the employee tries to contact the members of the group through the loudspeaker, but when he does, he realizes that he can't hear them, which would be impossible, since the elevator is full of microphones. Believing that he could lose his job if he goes missing for too long, Ben asks Sarah to lend him her cell phone so that he can warn his coworkers about the situation. The problem is that none of the devices seem to be working properly, and after a few attempts, they give up and decide to wait for the rescue to happen. At the same time, the pair of detectives finally arrive on the scene, and while talking to one of the janitors about the shards of glass that are scattered on the floor, Bowden notices a large blade of glass coming towards his partner, and pulls him away, saving his life. Realizing that the area could be a risk to civilians, he orders the janitor to cordon off the site, and declares that from now on, they are finally at the real crime scene. When he goes to the power panels, Dwight is confused, and contacts Lustig, reporting that all the elevator mechanisms are activated and working normally. Despite this, the security guard believes that a technical problem may have occurred, and asks the young man to turn off the power to the cabin and restart the devices. So Lustig alerts the survivors to what is about to happen, and soon after, the lights go out, which leaves Ben desperate. Quickly, the lights come back on, allowing the other members to realize that the security guard was trying to hold onto Janice during the blackout. When asked why he was doing this, Ben apologizes and tells them that when he was a child, he was imprisoned in a trunk by his own brother, who left him trapped for more than 6 hours, causing him to develop a certain level of claustrophobia. Trying to ease the man's trauma, Tony goes to the center of the elevator and removes the glass from the ceiling, allowing Ben a more open place to observe. Back in the command room, Lustig is extremely shaken, and reveals to his partner that the window Dwight was repairing is the one on the 35th floor, meaning that someone threw themselves from there that very morning. While watching the elevator, the monitors notice that the lights keep flashing, and ask Dwight to restart the power to the cabin again, but nothing seems to solve the problem. Ramirez, Lustig's partner, carefully analyzes the situation and becomes concerned when he notices a bizarre face appearing on the camera screens. As nothing seems to be working properly, the security guard asks the technician to go to the elevator himself, so that he can reset it manually and save those people. Dwight agrees with his friend's idea, but just as he's about to leave, he hears a noise and decides to find out what's going on. Walking through the maintenance area, the young man finds a small raccoon wandering through the tunnels, and tries to get its attention so that he can get it out. Just then, one of the elevators descends at high speed towards Dwight, who is almost hit by the object. Back in the macabre elevator, the lights continue to flash incessantly, until suddenly Sarah is thrown to the ground. When the energy stabilizes again, the woman stands up, and as she does so, she notices large cut wounds on her back. At the same time, Vince notices that his suit is soiled with blood, and tries to hide the stain, but is caught by Ben, who begins to question him, asking who was responsible for Sarah's injury. Furious at the accusations, the man says that he doesn't have a knife on him, so he couldn't have caused the woman any harm. Trying to understand what happened, Lustig asks Sarah to turn towards the camera so that he can see the wounds on her body. Noticing the seriousness of the situation, the security guards realize that something is wrong and decide it's time to call the police. While waiting for the authorities to attend to the emergency, Ramirez watches the last few minutes of the recording from the cameras and manages to pause the video at the exact moment the demonic face appeared on his screen. At this, the man becomes extremely frightened and holds up his crucifix, saying that an evil entity is present in that elevator. To calm him down, Lustig orders his friend to stop thinking about it and help him solve the emergency, because the lives of the survivors are in their hands. Outside, Elsa and Detective Bowden continue their analysis of the crime scene, but when another emergency call comes in, the man looks in the direction of the building and realizes that it is right next to the scene, so he decides to find out what is going on. After teaming up with the detective duo, the security guards go to the control room, where Bowden asks the survivors to show their identification documents to the camera, so that he can find out who each of them is. The problem is that the cameras are not high definition, preventing the officer from reading any of the documents. So the man asks Markowitz to check the list of interviews and look for all the people who didn't show up for the meetings scheduled that morning. In the elevator, the lights start flashing again, making Sarah increasingly frightened and causing her to have macabre hallucinations, seeing all the survivors as if they had already been eliminated. Despite this, the woman manages to calm down, but at that moment, the cabin's power goes off. When the lights come back on, everyone realizes that Vince was eliminated during the blackout, where a large shard of glass hit his neck. Ramirez quickly runs to alert the investigators, who decide to rewind the recordings so that they can find the culprit. While Bowden and Markowitz analyze what happened, Ramirez starts freaking out, saying that when an evil being is around, all things go wrong, as if a curse is chasing people. The man explains that this event has been named the encounter with the devil, and so he implores Bowden to be careful, as he believes that one of the survivors may be possessed by an evil entity. Even after hearing all those accounts, the detective doesn't believe a word the young man says and asks him to step back from the investigation. After this, Bowden analyzes Ben's criminal record and notices that the man has several police tickets due to numerous cases of aggression. Outraged, the investigator questions why they would hire such an unbalanced man as a security guard, and Lustig explains that he is only a temporary employee and therefore has no permanent connection to the company. In shock at having witnessed such a frightening elimination, Sarah is shaken, and Ben tries to comfort her. But he is interrupted by Tony, who reveals that he is a soldier and that he has seen even worse things when he took part in various war battles. In the control room, Bowden analyzes Vince's body, and after noticing a piece of paper hidden in his jacket, he asks Tony to take it and raise it towards the cameras. When he reads the letter, Lustig realizes that it belongs to one of the companies in the building, which has an office on the 35th floor. As soon as he discovers this, the investigator wastes no time, and after explaining to the firemen about the elevator situation, he sets off in the direction of the office. When he reaches the right floor, Bowden comes across Elsa, who has found a farewell letter while investigating the place. The woman says she can't understand what the victim meant in his message, and decides to read the final part of the letter, where the deceased revealed that he had heard the devil's footsteps getting louder and louder. Hearing this, Bowden becomes worried, and remembers what Ramirez had told him earlier. The detective then goes to the company's office, where he questions one of Vince's co-workers. When he finds out about the young man's perishment, the man says he's not surprised, and reveals that Vince was extremely hated by the whole town, as he was part of a huge fraud scheme that caused thousands of people to lose everything they had. After hearing the whole story, Bowden concludes that Vince may have been eliminated on purpose, and asks his partner to give him a list of all the customers who have complained about the scammer. Trying to find a way to fix the elevator, Tony sneaks through the roof hatch, but thinking that the young man was trying to flee the scene of the crime, Ben pulls him back and orders him to stay in the cabin until the authorities can catch up with them. While his partner analyzes the list of complaints and accusations made against Vince, Detective Bowden watches the recordings of the incident with the security guards, so that they can understand what caused the elimination. Appalled by what he saw earlier, Ramirez decides to show the moment when the demonic face appeared on his screen, and on seeing the apparition, the investigator takes a piece of paper from his pocket and hands it to the young man. Bowden says that on the day his wife and son were eliminated in a serious accident, the culprit fled the scene, leaving only a note of apology. Because of this, the man says that he doesn't believe in the existence of evil beings, because human beings are bad enough. Soon after, Lustig contacts Dwight, who is going down the elevator cables, so he can't answer the radio call, causing the security guard to call for the man more and more. Annoyed by the noise of his walkie-talkie, the technician tries to answer the device, but ends up overbalancing and falls right on top of the elevator, being eliminated instantly. Noticing that the man isn't responding, Bowden runs up to the roof so he can check the elevator tunnel. When he realizes that Dwight is no longer alive, the man concludes that the situation has entered a state of maximum emergency, causing more units of vehicles and firefighters to come to the scene and start destroying the wall of one of the floors, so that they can rescue the group. Meanwhile, the investigators remain in the control room, trying to gather more information about the civilians in the elevator. When they analyze the recordings from the security cameras, they realize that Jane is a thief who only came to the building to steal customers' wallets. As a result, Bowden concludes that all the survivors, except Tony, have crimes and enmities with countless people, which is why they may have been caught in some kind of trap. At that moment, the screens flash again, and the detective sees yet another macabre scene in the elevator, but the rest of the group doesn't notice, and continues the investigation as normal. Watching the footage from the lobby from a few hours ago, Bowden sees that Tony is carrying a suitcase, and noticing that the young man no longer has his backpack with him in the elevator, he decides to act. The problem is that the lights start flashing again, and the investigators brace themselves for what is about to happen. Another blackout occurs, and when the power returns to normal, the group finds Jane already lifeless, hanging from one of the cabin's lamps. Desperate, the detective orders the security guards to lock down the entire building and remove all the employees from the premises. Quickly, Markowitz goes to alert the fire department with Lustig, while Ramirez remains in the control room with Bowden. In the elevator, Tony and Ben decide to retrieve the old woman's body, and after removing the cables, the old woman falls to the floor, and the young man notices that several wallets have fallen out of the woman's purse. Frightened by the scene he has just witnessed, Tony tries to close Jane's eyes, but Ben reveals that this is only possible a few hours after the perishment, and on hearing this the young man becomes suspicious. Searching for a place where the suspect might have hidden his backpack, the pair of investigators went to the men's room, where they found Tony's suitcase, which was under one of the sinks. Opening the compartments, Bowden finds several tools and tries to understand why the young man hid something so random before entering the elevator. In the control room, Ramirez watches over the survivors and decides to say a prayer to protect them from the evil entity that is attacking them. Annoyed by the whole situation, Tony questions Ben, accusing him of lying about his claustrophobia and saying that he was responsible for eliminating Jane and Vince. Furious at the accusations, the security guard lunges at Tony, launching several attacks on his opponent. However, the soldier quickly immobilizes Ben and forces his body against the wall, which makes Sarah scream in despair. Upon realizing the fight that is taking place, Bowden returns to the camera room, and after ordering everyone to stop attacking each other, he asks the survivors to stand against the wall, so that they can find out who is attacking the group. Concerned for their safety, the detective asks Ramirez what will happen to them, and the young man says that by the end of the day, they will all be eliminated by the demonic presence. At that moment, Markowitz appears and reveals that Sarah is also a criminal, who has numerous cases of scams with her ex-husbands, as well as various thefts and frauds. Bowden's partner also says that the woman was about to meet her lawyer Wayne, who is working in the building that very day. With that, the investigator goes to the lobby, and after meeting Sarah's lawyer, he asks who is suspected of wanting to harm the woman. Wayne suggests that the detective investigate the people closest to his client, as Sarah has had major disagreements with them, especially her husband. In the maintenance area, Lustig finishes closing all the safety valves, but just as he's about to leave, he notices a short circuit at the end of the corridor, and decides to check what's going on. When he gets closer, the man realizes that the wires are touching and creating sparks, which has caused the elevator to malfunction. In order to reposition the wiring, Lustig picks up a piece of wood and uses it to lift the wires, but as he is too far away from the support, he tries to get closer, but ends up being electrocuted. Trying to call for help, the security guard runs into the lobby and is found by the investigators, who alert the paramedics immediately. After calming the situation down, Bowden goes back to looking for the real culprit of the crimes, at which point he realizes that the building's security company belongs to Sarah's husband, from whom she stole large amounts of money. So the detective concludes that Ben is the real culprit, and that he only eliminated other survivors as a distraction before he could finally get rid of Sarah. Desperate, Bowden rushes to the security room, arriving just as another blackout occurs in the elevator. As soon as the lights come back on, Tony and Sarah find Ben lying lifeless on the floor. Afraid of becoming the next victims, the remaining survivors grab shards of glass to defend themselves, and Bowden orders his partner to rush the fire department before anything worse happens. Ramirez explains that there is no concrete way to rescue those people, because the devil won't allow them to be saved so easily. Trying to calm Tony and Sarah down, the detective talks to them and tells them that when he lost his family, he tried to end his life, but no attempt worked. After several years of mourning, he realized that blaming the world for his mistakes is not the right thing to do, since everyone is responsible for their actions. After the speech, Sarah and Tony finally return to normal, and Bowden asks the survivors to drop their weapons and remain calm. Shortly afterwards, a policewoman appears and reports that Cheryl, Tony's wife, is trying to get into the room, and the investigator orders the officer to allow her in. When she arrives on the scene, Cheryl reveals that her husband has an interview scheduled for that day and has decided to keep his tools in a safe place. Checking the list of signatures again, Bowden realizes that the young man really did sign the appointment, so he can't be to blame. Terrified by Sarah's elimination, Tony tries to help her, at which point Janice stands up with her eyes completely dark, asking if the young man is ready for his turn. Thanks to the firefighters, who are closing the tunnel more and more towards the elevator, one of the steel cables ends up breaking, causing the cabin to plummet dozens of meters down the building. Realizing that he won't have another chance to apologize, Tony takes Ben's radio, and when he contacts Bowden, he reveals that he was to blame for the perishment of the detective's family. Tony explains that that night, he wasn't paying attention to the road, and after the accident, he realized that he had eliminated the policeman's wife and son, which made him afraid of being caught by the authorities, and caused him to flee the scene. After recounting everything that happened, the man asks for forgiveness for his mistakes and admits that he was to blame for Bowden's suffering. At this, the evil entity becomes angry and reveals that it will no longer be able to take Tony's soul, since the young man has asked for forgiveness for his sins. Outraged, the devil gets up and turns off all the power to the building, leaving the last survivor alone. A few minutes later, the authorities finally reach the inside of the elevator, and after rescuing Tony, Detective Bowden puts him in his car so he can take him to jail. During the trip, the investigator reveals that it was his family who was eliminated in that accident, and as much as he hates his actions, Bowden says he forgives the young man for his sins. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.